boundaries save so many people's lives. So we have
Yeah.
no choice but to use them, but we've just got to embrace that there's going to be lots of discomfort with setting limits in our family systems.
So, hey everyone, welcome to Dear Soul. I'm so honored to have today's guest. I have two incredible women who are doing the deep, necessary work of helping people navigate trauma and healing. So, we have Nell Jackson and Tish Granville of Twinpowerment, and they are licensed therapists, educators, and speakers who bring their clinical experience to everyday conversations, making healing accessible for all of us. And let me tell you, when I first came across their work, I knew this was a conversation that needed to happen. So I'm so excited. But before we dive in, I definitely want to give you ladies space to just kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why this work is so important to you.
Awesome. Well, I'll jump in first. My name is Tish Granville, and I am a licensed professional clinical counselor supervisor practicing in the state of Ohio. And I have been licensed for 14 years. And I have worked in outpatient clinical settings. And recently, as in like the last year and a half, I have been practicing solo. And so my practice is called Thresholds Counseling and Consulting. And I just specialize in treating complex trauma, family of origin pain, inner child wounds, and then lots of different clinical issues that pop up as a result of trauma. So sometimes anxiety, depression, and our day-to-day stress can be trauma symptoms. And so I work with adults 18 and up. And also, what's unique is I get to work from a faith-based perspective. So I get to incorporate a lot of faith-based tools into the work as well. So get to see a lot of healing happen from the clinical side and also spiritual transformation as well. And I live in Ohio. I'm married with two boys, 9 and 6 year old boys. And yes, I love all things. I'm a naturalist, so I love all things nature, being outdoors. That's how I connect. That's how I ground. That's how I also help myself to heal and um, connect with myself, connect with God. And yeah, so those are some the highlights of who Tish is.
Okay.
Hi. Yes, I'm Nell Jackson. I am a LPCCS licensed professional clinical counselor supervisor in the state of Ohio. I've been practicing in the field for about 15, licensed for about 14. Um, and then, of course, I have my own practice, my own private practice. It's called Green Pastures Therapy and Doula Services. So I'm also a doula. Um, so I do that along with trauma-informed care in my mental health practice. And then that umbrella kind of has under it inner child stuff, attachment issues, um, mom and dad wounds, or like family of origin wounds. And then I specialize in a wide variety of women's issues. So that's just, you know, being a woman, how we feel about our bodies, our self esteem, our self care, um, weight issues, all the roles that we have to fulfill as women. I specialize in all of that. And I also specialize in sex therapy and sex informed care, just trying to put a lot of information around sex because we don't really have healthy spaces to talk about it. We go to the gynecologist, but, and we laugh with our girlfriends. But other than that, women, like, where are we getting real information about sex? So I specialize in that. Yes, all things trauma. That's where I spend most of my time doing research and studying. Um, Definitely a holistic mind, body, spirit therapist. So I love teaching and informing people and just having them bring their bodies into the session because the bodies, we live in them, we die in them, everything in between happens to our bodies. So that's very important for me to focus on that during treatment. In my personal life, I am a mother of a 10-year-old. daughter. We live here in Ohio, and I just love all things crafting and art and poetry and birds and nature and um, um, playing games with my daughter. Anything to get away from the right brain activities. And sometimes, talking to people all day can be, you know, exhausting. So, yep, I love doing art. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and my practice and who I am, and excited to be here.
Okay, well, I'm so excited. Thank you both for sharing that. Like, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. And I just want to jump right in because I feel like I have so many questions and I'm ready to just go ahead and get started. So I wanted to create this series to kind of go along with my novel, Love Letters to My Soul, which has family trauma for sure in the novel. So one of the hardest things that I feel about healing is that sometimes we don't even recognize what needs healing because trauma can feel normal. Like, this is just how my family is, or it's always been this way. But I know that you two are big on helping people name the trauma so they can begin
Yeah.
to heal. So, from your experience, what does family trauma actually look like in real life?
Hmm.
Yeah, so um, family trauma, up close and personal, it just looks like shared stories of pain. And so you have individual trauma, but family trauma, it's in the phrase. It's the trauma that the family shares. So it can be repetitive events and experiences that multiple members of the family endure and go through. It could be certain members of the family inflicting pain onto other members of the family. And the trauma is just passing from body to body, person to person, generation to generation. And sometimes, like you said, it's a dysfunction that starts to feel very, very functional. And you
Mhm.
see generational family trauma even in the Old Testament. You see it in starting in Genesis. It's just, oh my gosh, it's generation after generation of just lots of painful patterns. And
Hmm.
so it could look like secrets. It could look like
Yeah.
neglect, abuse, abandonment, just um, cycles of crises, just one
Yeah.
crises after another. And it doesn't seem like there's a way off of the loop or off of that
Hmm.
merry-go-round. And it could be just acted out repetitively without any knowledge of how to stop it. And so, yeah, it's really just shared stories in the family system that it takes a brave person to name it and
Mhm.
stop the loop.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, and that's kind of leading into my next question. How can we get to the point where we're like, okay, this stops with me. Like, I'm tired of it going generation after generation. Like, even sometimes in my family, when I see my nieces and nephews going through some of the same things that I went through, I'm like, how can I get to the point where I'm like, it's this stops with me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, well, the first thing I think about is the resilient and the being strong term. Sometimes I think we endure stuff incidentally because we're just like you said, we're acclimated to it. We're so used to it. And I explain to people, just because you're resilient to something, it actually puts you in more danger of going through something repetitively. It's almost like a firefighter. They have a suit that they can withstand a fire, but by all means, just because they have that suit, they're just not supposed to stay in that fire for
Yeah.
longer than necessary. So there's resiliency with the suit and the mask and everything, but it doesn't mean they're supposed to stay in that fire. And I think we stay in stuff because I'm resilient. I can handle it. Yeah, and that's what family systems are. We're like, oh, that's just my brother, or that's just my mom. I
Mhm.
just tune it out. But we have to stop that cycle and stay, in healthier situations and stay away from fire, even if we have a fire suit on.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yeah, that is so good. And Like, I never really thought about it from that perspective, but like once we break that cycle, like let's say we decide that we're going to get out of the fire and now we're ready to set boundaries. So I feel like sometimes when we're setting boundaries in our culture, it can kind of feel like betrayal. They're like, "Well, hold on, like you've allowed this all this other time, why are you now setting a
Mhm.
boundary?" So, how do we kind of navigate setting boundaries, especially when it's not really well received?
Um, well, yeah, boundaries don't feel good to be on the receiving end because we like to try to get away with certain things in relationships. We like to impose our will on others. And when someone tells us that that's not okay and that's unacceptable, there is going to be some offense. But you find when you read boundary literature that that's a part of the process. And when you anticipate that people won't like your boundary, you can have some resources in place to be able to face that, to be able to deal with that. And so Brene Brown calls it boundary hangover. And so after you set a boundary, you're going to have some side effects. You're going to want to curl up in a ball. You're going to feel guilty.
Yeah.
You're going to feel maybe some somatic symptoms. You're going to second guess it. And what if that's just normal? What if that's just
Mhm.
expected? And so you just ride out those symptoms. You don't recant
Mhm.
or backtrack. You just plow through
Mhm.
those discomforts, but the relationship can't even get to the new healthy plateau without those boundaries. It's even if it's just little fragments of a relationship, it's not survivable without boundaries. And
Mhm.
so boundaries save so many people's lives. So we have
Yeah.
no choice but to use them, but we've just got to
Yeah.
embrace that there's going to be lots of discomfort with setting limits in our family systems.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think about as she was talking, I was like, that's the like perfect analogy, metaphor. And I think about like if somebody breaks into your house, like you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to have an alarm system, you're going to double lock your doors, you're going to get
Mhm.
a watchdog, have a sign, and you're not going to feel guilty. You don't feel sorry for the intruder, like, oh God, I feel so bad that he can't get back in.
not at
And we got to think about it the same way with
Mhm.
emotional, financial, spiritual boundaries that we're setting.
Yeah.
If we lived in a boundaryless society, like if there was a sign or not a sign on a bank, no restrictions, people would just be going in and taking money. Like boundaries keep us from making bad choices. So sometimes helping other people on the other side understand, like, if I didn't set this boundary, you would you would be totally reckless. Like, so this is helping you. This is helping you too.
Yeah, for sure. And you said something, you said that line, but we're family. Like, they throw that out there, oh, but we're family. So how do you really handle people who kind of use guilt to keep dysfunction alive?
It goes back to that allowing people to have their feelings. Once we realize that what they feel about your boundary is not your business. I mean, of course, you want to be appropriate and you want to do things in a sacred way that are in alignment with your value system. But also that's what gets us in trouble and has us kind of backtracking our boundaries, and we are flooded by other people's feelings. And so when people use guilt or use a lot of pushback or use the but we're family, or but I'm your mama, or but you're being disrespectful, or but we can just observe and notice their flare up,
Mhm.
because that's what it is. They're reacting, they're acting out, they're having this flare
Yeah.
up, and you can just be kind of scientific about it. Oh, I notice you don't like my boundary too much, and not take that on
Mhm.
because that is their stuff. Let them sit in the discomfort. Let them go sort it out. Let them go talk to their counselor about the limit, and and then you can kind of use that for the next one and for the next time and for the next time, and then you'll just build a capacity to be able to tolerate when that happens in the family, because it will happen, because people are used to operating in unhealthy ways, and you're messing up the party by coming in with all your boundaries and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, that's kind of one of the messages that I kind of wanted to put in my book is like, how can we set these boundaries? But how my question is like when you're setting boundaries, how can you avoid being isolated? Because sometimes we'll put up so many walls.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're kind of isolated and we have
Yeah.
no one. So how can we kind of differentiate between the two of those?
I always tell my clients that boundaries can be looked at as prevention, like having like a plan ahead of situations that you know there may be some, triggering boundary moment. So like if you go, over family's house, maybe before you even get there, have a plan in your mind, like, hey, I can only stay for an hour. I got somewhere to be at 3, even if you don't have anywhere to be at 3, but just have a plan. That way you don't feel locked in
Yeah.
to opening yourself up to being, stepped on or have your boundaries stepped on. Um, so I always tell my clients, have a plan in your head for situations that are going to be tough. Don't you? We can't just go out living our lives assuming that boundaries are never going to be crossed. There's nothing wrong with rehearsing. There's nothing wrong with practicing in the mirror. Okay, you're standing too close. Okay, you're stepping too close, and then that way you're in the grocery store, you're like, oh, you're stepping too close. Like, I already rehearsed this. I rehearsed this, and then you don't have to feel as guilty
Mm-hmm.
because there is a plan.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like with me, I'm always like kind of in my head a little bit. So I feel like I'll have a plan, but then the plan when you're in the moment,
Yeah.
the plan just kind of goes out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that makes sense. Now I kind of want to shift the conversation just a little bit. So we were talking about boundaries and breaking cycles. And really the next part of the next theme is healing and forgiveness. So I feel like now, people think healing just means I'm going to cut you off. Like we're definitely in like a cancel culture. Like I'm cutting you off. That's it.
Yeah.
But healing is deep. It's layered work. And forgiveness is one of the hardest parts of that journey. Do either one of you have a part of your healing journey where you had to really forgive something that was just hard to forgive? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, forgiveness is definitely very deep work. It plummets you into the depths of a place that you don't necessarily want to be in, and that's both the difficulty and the beauty of it. And so I've had plenty of plunges down into the deep abyss, where you have to reckon and wrestle with letting somebody off the hook, because essentially that is what forgiveness is. It is really a financial term. If you just even look at the financial language, it's used in financial institutions. When something is forgiven, a debt is forgiven, it means, doesn't mean you didn't rack up the charges. It doesn't mean you didn't accrue the balance. It means you don't owe it. You don't have to pay it. And what I always tell people, I tell people, just look at a debt forgiveness letter. They put to the penny how much you owe, and then they will put to the penny how much has been forgiven. And so that goes to the next piece of, in my forgiveness journey, it has been so important for me to name the debt. You can't just skip to the I forgive you for, and you can't be vague about it either, because being vague keeps you in the shallow end of the healing journey. You have to be able to say, I forgive them for this, 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 and this, and really get accurate. So that way the healing of that process can be accurate. But it really is just that they don't owe me anything, and that sets me free, because like the bank, I don't have to keep sending letters. We can stop calling you because you're not answering the phone anyway. They're free from having to hunt you down. So same with relationships. I don't have to hunt you down for an apology. I don't have to hunt you down for an explanation of why you did what you did. I don't have to hunt you down for understanding. I can let go of all of that, and it doesn't mean that you didn't do what you did, but also I'm going to move differently with you. And so it doesn't have to be cut off. but it's definitely going to be some resculpting the arrangement between us,
Right.
so that I'm safer and so that we can prevent more toxicity and dysfunction. And so that's the piece a lot of people don't understand. Like, it doesn't mean reconciliation, but it also doesn't have to always mean cutting off.
Right. That's so true. And I actually had a friend of mine ask me a question. They were like, so I decided she started it. She's like, so I'm on this healing journey. So I'm already like, okay, well, what's about to happen? She's like, I'm on this healing journey. And I decided that I was going to forgive someone who had hurt me. And so she forgave them. But the problem was that they kept doing the offense. So what she forgave them for, it was like a repeat offender. They kept doing it and kept doing it. So how can we heal when the person that you're trying to heal from is still causing you pain?
No, that one is so hard. That goes into not just setting a boundary, but um, adjusting your boundary to their behavior. So, for example, go back to the security system. If someone's, goofing around my property, I may just add locks. But then if they keep on, okay, double locks. Okay, now I got security. Okay, now I have extra camera. Okay, now I have a gate. Okay, now I have a Rottweiler. Okay, now I have, you know, 911 on speed. Like, you just have like all these systems in place. And I always tell my clients, like, don't start with the highest possible boundary, unless you're sure that person's going to break it. Just start with the basic one first, and then if they keep doing the offense, you just keep upping what your boundary is. And the control and the power is that we all have the power to remove ourselves from situations or walk away from spaces. That's always going to be our power. So if they continuously keep offending, like, you do have the power to block them, no longer receive their calls, not, hang out with them anymore. If they show up at your house unannounced, you don't have to open the door. Like, it sucks to have to do those things. And dealing with the grief of it is a whole, different situation, but you have to keep setting limits to what they're doing. And it does not mean, and Tish agrees with me, setting boundaries does not guarantee that the behaviors will stop. It just gives you the power and builds your self-esteem that you stood up for yourself. But it is true, and I hate to say it to clients, but sometimes setting boundaries doesn't make the behavior stop.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think really when it comes to that, like, it kind of just to pivot to faith. I wanted to talk about like faith. There always has to be, I feel like, something more, because you can go on this healing journey and you can say, I'm whole, I'm healed, but I feel like your faith has to play a part in it. And so the parts where you lack, then that's where God can pick up and be strong. So I kind of wanted you both to just kind of answer, how important do you believe that faith is when it comes to really being healed and really being whole?
It's very important, if not the most important piece, because you are made in God's image, and we are constantly on this path of brokenness to becoming whole, to shalom, right? The beauty of shalom is this idea of harmony and integration. And so we're all somewhere on that path of becoming more whole, but wholeness is a spiritual concept. There is no wholeness apart from God.
Mhm.
And so, whether you know it or not, um, it's a spiritual element. We are all on this spiritual path of redemption, and you can reject it for sure, but it's much easier if you just go ahead and accept that and bring it in. And so it could be scriptural truth, biblical truth. I have to say biblical truth because there's a lot of other pseudo truths out there that people gravitate toward. but it's got to be biblical truth. So what does God say about me, my situation, my story, my pain? um, I believe in having a theology of healing. What does the Bible say about how healing happens? And I believe in having a theology of suffering. What does the Bible say about how we're to encounter suffering? And so faith is absolutely so important, so foundational for you to even know how healing happens. And so, yeah, it's super important. And we both are pretty much just though that we're very principled in that way. That's a value of ours and how we practice, and anything that we attach ourselves to. Healing is absolutely in light of who God is and who He says we are. So
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that one, like, yes, he's everything. He's, the creator of all things. And he created us with in his mind, like, wholeness. Like, he created us even like back at the beginning of time, like he created, Adam and Eve in this idea of wholeness. And, we fell away from that early on and we've been trying to get back to it. But the first thought that came to my head, I was thinking about the woman with the issue of blood and how bleeding signified like losing something, like constantly like losing of herself. And even, with that, I think every day of our lives, we're constantly losing something, like something's draining us, something's coming out of us, something's pouring out of us, spilling out of us. And I think of the hymn, it's Jesus, it's Jesus, it's Jesus in my soul. I touched the hem of his garment, his blood made me whole. And I love that his blood, like his bleeding, is what makes us whole. Um, yeah, he got his body broken for our wholeness, our togetherness. Um, so no matter what's spilling out of us, what's broken, what's damaged, what's not pieced together, like his blood has to be what makes us
that's
all the way whole.
Right.
that's good.
See, y'all just been dropping some things, just like real low key. Just you're so calm, but you're giving like so much value to this conversation. I've really never thought about the woman of issue with the issue of blood like that. So
Yeah,
I
that's
really
cool.
appreciate that.
Mhm,
It's a really good perspective when you think about
mhm.
something pouring out of you like that daily. You never really make that connection. So
Yeah.
I love that you both tie in faith with the therapy because I definitely feel like it's so important. And for me, when I wrote the book was really therapeutic for me because you can kind of see some similarities in my journey through all the characters. The infertility with the main character, kind of the same with me. My husband and I, it will be married for 10 years in September,
Wow.
and we've been trying to have kids, haven't been able to have kids. And it's something to really navigate through. So for me, writing the book was so therapeutic, just kind of the storytelling of it.
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to ask you, really the last question here, whether it's journaling, therapy, or conversations, why do you think giving words to our experiences is so important?
So in therapy speak, we call that externalizing or
Mhm.
externalization. It's when you take what's inside, what's internal, and you, in some sort of way, some sort of ritual or process, you move it out. And so anything where you have something tangible or movement based or body based, process based, you actually get to have tangible elements of this stuff that's just floating around inside, and you get to see it, and then you have a little bit more, you can manipulate a little bit more. Like if it's art, you can do a lot with the manipulation of those pieces, those emotions, those narratives, those beliefs, those wounds. If it's journaling, there's
Yeah.
science that shows that journaling, writing unlocks a part of the brain that nothing else you do can unlock. So it's like this access port, right? And only writing can open it. And I believe writing, journaling, art, sculpting, storytelling, having
Yeah.
conversations, those are all ways to externalize. and then you get to have it witnessed. So when it's just floating around inside, there's not as much opportunity for witnessing. If it's just thoughts or just stuff you're feeling, that stuff needs to be witnessed in safe places. And so by externalizing it, either you get to witness it back because you're just like, whoa, what did I draw here? I didn't even know this was inside of me. When you see your art for the first time, you're like, this. When you hear the song you composed, you're just like, what? Or when you share your story with someone and you're watching their empathy and them nodding and them resonating with you, and you get to see someone witnessing you, that is so powerful. But here's the thing, like shame gets in the way of us wanting to externalize because sometimes we don't want to see what we wrote in the journal, in the book, or we don't want to see someone witnessing us. Like, it's too powerful, it's overwhelming. Like, what if they reject me? But it's so important to have that as a part of the healing. If it's just all in here, you're really missing out on that opportunity to have someone see you and know you, hear you, understand you, even if it's just you hearing, seeing, knowing, understanding you, or God hearing, seeing, knowing, understanding you. But that's what it is. It's externalizing.
Yep. I think talking things out. I think out of all of the books of the Bible and all of the writers and all of the poets and all of the prophets, the disciples, out of all of them, it's King David. Like, he was the one that, like, I wish I could know what the disciples were like really feeling and believing inside. But David, he always poured out what he was actually feeling. Like, he was telling stories about his mental health. Um, and I think having just, at least that's why I always go to the Psalms. I'm like, I need something relatable. This was like a diary, like I'm reading somebody else's diary. Like, oh, my soul. It's just like, he's always, oh, these enemies. And, he's always talking about what's happening around him. And that was a great example of what we should do. Like, God wants to hear our stories. He wants to hear our pain, our laments, our sacrifices. Like the stories behind like how we exist on a day-to-day basis. And I think he's a great example, and to model that, like, I actually in practice, along with a lot of the other like little hobbies and coping skills I use, sometimes I will take a psalm and I will take like one passage at a time, and I'll just write a paragraph about each one, about how that, like, how I can relate to like what he's saying. So if he says something like, I just feel like my enemies are always coming after me, I say, like, man, I feel like the enemy of debt, or the enemy of depression, or the enemy of, and I just say, my journal entry along with his. And I think that's a cool way to cope.
Yeah, and that is so, I think that's amazing. That actually leads me to just the last thing I wanted to ask of both of you. Just if you can give the viewers just like one thing, like maybe one, not, I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but maybe just one kind of an outlet that they can do while they're on their journey to healing that'll really help kind of aid that journey.
I have so many. It's so hard to choose one. I'm just gonna go with my fave, and that's getting out in nature. That's getting outside. That is walking, like getting on a path and walking. For one, it's bilateral. You're moving your body left to right as you're walking, but it's not just the bilateral movement. You're actually moving your body as you're processing something. So you're trying to navigate something internally. And I would say just that movement of the body plus the hopefully movement of some of the pieces of your story in your mind together is just like chef's kiss, is the perfect combo. And you're getting some exposure um, to the wind and the sounds of nature and the smells of nature. And it's just such a good exposure compared to digital exposure and voices of people and noise pollution and those kinds of things. So nature for me is definitely a really good way to navigate and even process cycles you're stuck in. Maybe start your walk with a question you have for yourself. But maybe by the time you finish the walk, you have a little bit more revelation or insight.
And I think I agree with that part. I'm on a weight loss journey as well. Just, shameless plug. I've lost 50 pounds, so I'm really excited telling everybody whether they want to know or not. I'm really excited.
Celebrate it.
Right. But I know when I go like out in nature, it really like we have a park maybe like 5 minutes from our home. And when I walk the trail, it's just like so freeing. So I definitely agree with everything you were saying there.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah. Let's see. This one is I get stuck on this one just because maybe I have so many coping skills, but I'm also going to go with the first thing on my mind, which is just moving, like movement, like dancing, just because we just store up so much stress. And I know that um, a way to cope is to sort of like process our feelings and our emotions. But a lot of people struggle with that if they're numb or they're just out of tune. So we can bypass having to sit down. Oh, I can't think of what to write, or I tried to color and nothing came to me. Like, so we can do those things, but maybe moving first, because you don't have to think to move. You can just start moving, just dance, turn on some music, like, walk, um, jump up and down, jumping jacks. I mean, just anything. It could be slow movements. Um, but I definitely think moving your body is a great way. Like you can shake. Um, it's just a great way to like cope with stuff that you don't even know that's in your body. And then once you move for a little bit, then you can go to like a calmer, quiet coping skill, like, coloring or journaling or, you know, bird watching or doing a puzzle or something like that. But yeah, move the body.
Yeah, I'm about to try that. I think you mentioned that you like birds earlier. I'm about to try the bird watching. So you just like it's just peaceful or
All
what do
the
you
things
all
peaceful. You learn a lot about God, even because there's scripture that talks about birds. So maybe you want to connect that to a revelation. And just watching their behavior can be insightful. It's good mindfulness training because maybe you're caught up in a loop and maybe just watching a bird fly around can break that loop and you can get out of your head some. Then, of course, their songs is stimulating. Just listening to them opens up another channel for you to just regulate and calm. Those are just some of the benefits.
Yeah, I think is it Dr. Anita Phillips said that
Yeah.
10 minutes of bird watching a day reduces stress by a
Yep.
nice percentage. Yeah.
The Garden Within, the book The Garden Within. Yep, she did. She did talk
Okay.
about listening to birds.
I'm gonna try it out. My sister actually just started reading that book as well, but I'm gonna try that out for sure.
It's amazing.
Do it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like I just want to just definitely tell both of you thank you so much again. I know you have no idea who I am, and I just reached out to you, and I really appreciate you saying yes and you just coming on this platform to really just share your wisdom. I feel like it's gonna bless so many people who are carrying those family wounds, struggling with boundaries, or even trying to take the first steps towards healing. So I'm just so appreciative of both of you for coming on the platform. I definitely want you just to leave the viewers with where they can connect with you just to kind of keep learning and maybe, I don't know, I may reach out to you, just maybe take advantage of your services.
Absolutely. Well, so as far as counseling, if you're in Ohio, you can definitely connect with us for if you are looking for some good clinical care, but you have to be in Ohio. It's just a whole licensing thing. But as far as just connecting with us to pick our brain about something or to just see what tools and resources we have out there, we have a page called Twinpowerment. It is on IG. It is at Twinpowerment. And we also have a Facebook page, but our IG is our biggest platform, I would say. So at Twinpowerment is you can connect with us there. And then, we have websites. I have a website for my practice. There's resources, and I have a blog there that has some cool things. If there's a way that we can just give that information to you, and then you can put it out to your platform, that'll be good.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And I just want to close it out. And always, I want everyone to make sure you subscribe to this Dear Soul podcast, it will be on YouTube, All Things Joy, but it's also going to be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So make sure you stay connected for the next episode. And remember, healing is possible and you're not alone. Until next time, take care of your soul.